as you can imagine, I just wanted to speak to you in some form after yesterday. First of all, just to get your reaction, because I think a lot of people didn't know what to expect yesterday, and now we know. So yeah, what was your reaction first of all?
Well, to be honest, not much. Clearly, I was, a bit surprised, the camera footage and so forth, but that has no bearing on, what I thought. It's not a case I've really been following, because it doesn't really have much, and what happens to the four individuals doesn't really have much bearing on the work we're doing in the city to, support the city's ambition and, tackle inequality.
Can you just elaborate on that a bit? I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear you say that you've not really been following the case. Can you just explain a bit more about why that is?
So what's my day job? What am I trying to get done in Bristol to support our ambition to tackle inequality? It's building affordable homes, right? It's tackling the blockages to employment. It's recognising, one is facing up to COVID, but also dealing with the fact that the consequences of the action we're taking to tackle COVID are compounding inequalities. We know that the poorest and most marginalised have been hit first and hardest. And we have to take on those challenges in the face of a climate and an ecological emergency. So that's what my day job is. So the question is, what's the relationship between the fate of the four people and delivering on those outcomes? Well, there is no relationship. So, that's where I expend my energy. So if I'm gonna be doing research for half an hour, I'm not going to spend my time listening to the arguments in, around the Colston 4. I'm going to spend my time working out how we deliver affordable homes, aren't I?
I believe I'm right in saying you were asked to take part in the trial as a witness. Is that the case? And if it is that wrong?
Yeah, I was just checking to see if I had no knowledge of any requests coming in. I was just looking to my office to see if any request was made, but no, I had no request.
No, okay. The reason I say that is that there was a lot of comment made yesterday as to why you hadn't been more involved in the trial. And to be honest, I was making an assumption off the back of that you had been asked to take part and hadn't done. But yeah,
I'm not involved because it really doesn't have much to do with what we're trying to get done in the city. As I've just said, we've got a cost of living crisis coming up as well now. What do I spend my time doing? The trial is just not. I can understand for some people, that it's a spectacular event and got lots of attention because of the way the statue was pulled down and all the drama about it. But really, in the cold light of day, it really has got very little to do with delivering for Bristol.
Following on from that, you personally and the council on the whole came up quite a bit in the trial, and the perceived lack of action that you had taken over taking the statue down or getting a new plaque put up on it and all these kinds of things. Do you hold any regrets now based on what has happened over not potentially doing more when you had the chance?
So let's look at the arguments that were made, right? And we had these out-of-town barristers in. So one of the argument is there's inaction in general, inaction on the statue in particular, right? Well, that's just demonstrably untrue, right? And then you got to ask what it's inaction on. So if they're saying there's inaction around Colston and the Colston legacy within the city, why are they not talking about Bristol Beacon? Right? That's not a result of inaction, is it? The name, which was actually the real target of a lot of activity, that the biggest concert venue in the city was named after Colston. Well, that name was changed, right? So why are people not talking about that? So even if you think that that's unimportant, that's demonstrably that there was action. Secondly, even if the name of the Colston Hall hadn't been changed to Bristol Beacon, right? If this is actually about racism, then is the argument that this administration in the last 5 years has done nothing to tackle racism in Bristol, that there's been inaction on racism? Again, that's ludicrous, right? It's demonstrably untrue. So, to the extent to which the criticism is around that, that's a ridiculous argument. If the argument is that we drove the prosecution, which is another suggestion that's been made. Again, that's just factually incorrect. We were asked to make a factual statement. We're a local government. Of course, we're going to provide that factual statement. That factual statement is not an expression of desire for a prosecution or a non-prosecution. That's up to the Crown Prosecution Service. As the custodians of the statue, we confirm the statue was there. It was pulled down. It was thrown into the harbour. Everyone saw that. That's what we do. So that's essentially what the criticisms are rallying around. And then people want me to support, to participate in the trial. That's not for me. That's between the defendants, the jury, the judge, and the barristers.
If I can just jump in though, a lot of the talk in the trial was about the various petitions that had been handed into the council over the years, and in particular the one about having a new plaque put on to contextualise the statue more. Obviously, whether or not that was going to be followed up with was some, would have required action from the council that clearly didn't happen because the plaque never got put on. Can you just address that a bit more directly? Do you regret now that plaque wasn't added or anything like that?
No, I mean the search for regret. I mean, I have a big respect for your journalism, but the search for regret is a silly search. So on the petitions that have been handed in over the statue, they've been going on for a long time. I mean, there's another kind of interesting question to be asked. Is it that you wait for 100 odd years for something to happen on a statue and then it's the black guy's fault when he comes along? I mean, that's a little bit of a interesting conclusion to draw. But remember, so there were petitions coming in all sorts of things. It's not true that nothing happened in response to the Colston controversy. The name of the Colston Hall was changed, right? That's not insubstantial. But do you do everything at once, or do you do things, in a way that actually brings people with you? And the way the Colston Hall's name was changed with a consultation and public engagement, and all the rest of it. So there was a response, but it was done in an orderly way. In terms of the plaque, it is important to understand what actually happened there as well. And again, I think people are taking half an insight and trying to present it as a whole truth. There was work on the plaque. I wanted a plaque on the statue that was clearer about who Colston was and how he made his money, and a number of people who died and a number of children that died as a result of the way he made his money. Work was done on the plaque. The plaque was brought to me, and I said, I'm not paying for that. Because the plaque that was then presented to me at the end of that initial process was so weak and sanitized, it was an insult. And I said, I would prefer to have no additional plaque on the statue, and have the city actually confront the fact that it was such a contentious issue that we couldn't even come to agreement on the plaque, and off the back of that have a discussion about the statue, then put up a sanitized plaque on the statue that attempted to put the debate to bed, but was an insult to history and an insult to people who had been enslaved, and an insult to people who opposed slavery and wanted better for Bristol. So there's a little bit more nuance to the plaque than is necessarily being presented. And people in court present their arguments to win their case, not always to get at truth. And I think that we have, there has been a bit of playing with Bristol City Council and me, and and our role in all this to try and win that case.
We could, in an ideal world, maybe not for you, but for me, speak about this for hours. But we've got lots to do. So I've just got one more question for you. There are lots of people out there, both in Bristol and frankly across the world, who will see this result and be very upset with it, that think they were caught on camera doing what many would say was criminal damage, and yet they're walking free. What is your response to people what's your message rather to those people that think that?
Yeah, and I anticipate that. I think there will be confused people. Again, it's got no bearing on any any attitude I have towards the participants. But, I said at the time, I thought it was all on camera. But that, and then they saw it happen. But then I haven't been privy to the legal arguments. I haven't followed them. I don't know and you know what the jury was hearing, what they weren't hearing, and I don't know the deliberations we went through. And we have a jury system. It's a central part of our political order, and we need to respect it. And I do respect it. So I respect the outcome. But I will say that since the very beginning, of this whole journey that the city's been on since the statue was hauled down, I've been clear that the way I lead Bristol, has to take a number of things into account. That there are those people who are elated at the way the statue was pulled down and that it was pulled down. There are those who are sympathetic to it not being there but are dismayed at the way it happened. And there are some people that are dismayed at the way that statue not being there and absolutely aghast at the way it happened as well. And we have to build a city for all those people. So at the end of a process, that if you don't get what you wanted, or even if you actively get what you didn't want, the city's respected you, and the city sees you and has heard from you, right? And that's my job. Now, my end game is that we are not a city that celebrates Colston and people like Colston and people who made their money off enslaved people or oppression of other people. We don't celebrate those people and commemorate them. We don't forget them because we're not trying to airbrush history and rub them out of history. But the journey I want to take the city on is one that gets to that position where we're not celebrating those people and venerating them, but has taken everyone with us. There's the challenge, right? We can't go at the pace of the slowest, but we do need to take people with us. Otherwise, we may get short-term wins that satisfy us emotionally, but actually it comes at the cost of the relationships and the solidarity we need to make real substantial change in the way our city functions. And that would be a problem.